Before I say anything about any of this, I want something made abundantly clear. No one, under any circumstance, deserves death threats and harassment, especially anyone who's just friends or family or acquaintances with somebody who's getting a load of backlash over anything. I don't think anyone deserves any of the shit both Thor on the PirateSoftware side of things deserve, nor Ross on the StopKillingGames side of things of the campaign. None of them deserve any of that, especially not people around them deserve any of that because of all the controversies and to do with this stuff that's been going on. Okay, nobody should have to deal with any of that. Unfortunately, as Josh Strife Hayes put it, there are unhinged fucking dipshit lunatics who will go to those extremes in what they believe is for good reasons, but there's never a good reason for any of that garbage. And I want that made abundantly clear, because I do feel that that stuff should be acknowledged when talking about this conversation, when bringing these things up. Nobody deserved any of the garbage that was involved in this whole debacle, regardless of how passionately you feel about this. Because overall, those hurt the campaign and what it's trying to accomplish. Regardless if there's people you actively disagree with or people that you can't convince that the campaign is good or bad, whatever side you lie on, nobody deserves any of that, and anybody doing that shit are fucking pieces of garbage and should be written out of the conversation. They've invalidated themselves by doing horrific things that actively contribute to nothing and only detract. I want that made abundantly clear. Now, to actually talk about what this whole thing is about. StopKillingGames. It's a campaign you've likely seen on the internet, either through me, just like posting it in different places, or more likely people who actually have, numbers behind their names, talking about a consumer rights campaign involving video games. And basically the premise is, StopKillingGames is all about stopping publishers from being able to turn off your video game. Basically, I don't just mean close it, I mean that they are able to basically remove your ability to play video games. This happened a while back with Ubisoft and The Crew. Basically, they turned off the servers, and now people who spent hard-earned money on that game way back in the day, or even closer to before they announced that, on a game that they then turned off the server functionality to, and thus rendered the game unplayable. The entire campaign, regardless of what genre a video game might be or how a video game is constructed, the entire goal of the campaign is to prevent publishers from simply denying anyone access to a game they have purchased, because it is a product, and making it so that by law, companies like game publishers and developers will have to do something to implement in games that have released after a law has been ratified, so that a game can still remain in a functional, playable state. Now, this law, whatever form it might be, would not apply retroactively. So games that are already released, be it, The Crew, the other Crew sequels, Destiny 2, World of Warcraft, no game that has already been released would be affected by this law, even if they came out with a paid expansion for that after the law had been ratified. It simply would not affect games that are already out. This would only apply to new games. Now, there are reasons why the wording on this such thing is so specifically vague, so specifically non-specific, because it's an opening negotiating position, especially when it comes to the EU Citizens Initiative. Basically, the campaign has phrased these things in such a way because they want to use it as an opening negotiating position to work with game developers and publishers to basically make it so that nobody is restricted financially or creatively, and we can work with bodies like the EU or the UK to basically establish what the law is around that, to basically make it so that it works for everybody. The main thing, though, is to just make sure that it follows, ethical consumer practice, basically. It's basically making it so that any game that you've purchased or spent money in will still be playable when the company can no longer or doesn't want to support the game. Because it shouldn't be down to them constantly funding a server or constantly having to spend development money on a game that nobody is playing anymore. But at the same time, people still want to play their video games because they bought them or they invested huge amounts of time into them. It's basically saying, hey, I bought this DVD of this movie but then the studio who made it basically turned off the server that allows me access to the movie despite me either purchasing it digitally or physically. Because in this scenario, it doesn't make a difference. The delisting of games is an entirely separate issue, one that I hope a campaign like this will then spawn further talks on and spawn a further campaign that will hopefully press towards dealing with issues like that when a game is delisted. But unfortunately now there has been lots of controversy, as I said earlier, that, you know, shouldn't really have been a major factor in this whole scenario. For those not caught up, basically a popular streamer and YouTuber known as PirateSoftware, aka Thor, basically made some disparaging comments against Ross and overall trashed the campaign at the beginning of its momentum. Now, I don't really want to entertain the conversation of whether or not Thor killed the momentum of the campaign, because I think the data, especially the one provided by Thor on his Twitter of showing the momentum alongside a timeline, I believe using that timeline you could easily argue for both sides as whether he did or he didn't, and honestly I don't think it's relevant to the conversation anymore, and I don't really want to talk about that. What I do want to talk about is Thor himself. He's since come around and has apologized for making horrible, disparaging comments against Ross, the leader of the campaign himself, and that's good. But he's not apologized for another thing he factually did. Factually, I know, I apologize, but still. Now, again, I want to reiterate, I do not wish any misfortune on Thor or those around him, including the horrendous stuff that he and others have already received because of this situation, but regardless of those things, regardless of his feelings and perspective on the campaign and what horrible psychotic people have done, I'm sorry, but he did more than just talk about Ross in a disrespectful way. He fundamentally and factually misrepresented the campaign's goals and still refuses to admit he did so, despite it being proven by Ross, some ordinary gamers, and many others on YouTube alone. And I don't just mean in stream clips, I mean in the two main videos that Thor put on his channel about Stop Killing Games when this all initially went down. Now, if somehow he misinterpreted the goals of the campaign, fine. I'd be more than willing to hear him out on it, even if, like, some people would probably, like, just say, oh, well, that's just him using it as an excuse. I'd happily believe it if he just came out and said, yeah, no, I'm sorry, I misinterpreted that. But he hasn't even done that. For those who don't know what the misinterpretations are, I will leave a video to Ross's full video on the end of Stop Killing Games, where he shows exactly where Thor misrepresents the campaign. And here's the thing, this isn't just some random person on the internet with a bit of a voice, a bit of clout, doing something bad, and there's very easily accessible evidence to prove, hey, here's the mistakes you did, or hey, here's where you purposely did a thing. Like, regardless of interpretation, it's not just about that. It's more just about, I'm massively disappointed in Thor, and for reasons I'll get into a little bit. At first, I just need to express this. He doesn't have to change his mind about the initiative in any way, but him refusing to admit the fault of what he did, what he actually did, not what is assumed or speculative without extremely hard definitive proof like the momentum killing. I'm not entertaining that conversation about it, but what he definitively did, which was at worst make up lies about the campaign, or at best misinterpret it. As someone like me who was a fan of him before all this controversy stuff kicked up, before he started talking about the Stop Killing Games campaign, it's extremely disappointing, especially when in the video that Josh Strife Hayes put on his second channel, Josh Strife Says, where in the video he talks about the one fault he's admitted to, which is talking smack about Ross, but then is being very adamant that he didn't do anything else wrong. And then alongside that, he's then trying to humble brag about how he's a good person because he didn't want to be paid by off-brand games, but have to be paid minimum wage for legal reasons. It's all just massively, incredibly disappointing, and him talking about it like that is incredibly tone deaf. He didn't present his concerns in a manner that was constructive for either the campaign nor other developers that were trying to find out what this campaign was all about. He had a real opportunity to own up to all of his mistakes regarding this issue, not just the most immediate mistake or the one he could apologize for with minimum ego bruising. It's more than fair for him to have concerns about the language of the initiative. It's great that he's thinking about this with developers in mind, but to then at worst, like I said, make up lies, or at best make false assumptions on said language and its intentions when it's spelled out plain as day and not apologize for it, I'm sorry, but to me it comes across as his pride gassing him up and making this whole debacle just asinine. I feel if he properly cared about developers as much as he says he does, he would have offered to work with Ross and the campaign with their interest in mind from the get-go to ensure it didn't potentially harm developers' creative opportunities in the future, regardless of how he feels about Ross or anyone else involved in the campaign on a personal level. Because the way I see it is, it doesn't matter if he's right or wrong about the campaign. If he sees the Stop Killing Games campaign as a Titanic sailing towards an iceberg moment, why would he just curse out the ship and its captain and leave its passengers in danger rather than try and help course correct from a potential danger nobody else can see? If he believes this could be more of a detriment than a boon to the industry, why didn't he take up Ross on his open offer to everyone when he started this campaign and help collaborate on it for the benefit of developers everywhere? Yes, that is a very idealistic and hindsight-fueled perspective, but I'm just tired. I'm very tired of seeing Thor not put his money where his mouth is regarding this issue. I'm also very tired of seeing him not own up to his mistakes. I was a fan of his content prior to this whole thing, and it's just incredibly disappointing. If people as passionate about this industry as him can't navigate a path to where different perspectives can come together for the sake of this industry's betterment on all sides, then it casts more doubts over resolving more problems with video games, with this entire industry. If that's the case, what chance does this industry have at fixing horrific and more dire issues like workplace conditions, crunch culture, mass layoffs, abysmal working contracts, and royalties to those who make this industry great? That's the biggest problem I have with all of Thor's thing. It's not just the stubborn, I don't even want to say resolve, the stubbornness to just not admit fault where he blatantly and definitively has fault, but it's just so jading. I feel like the best take anyone's had that isn't directly involved in a situation like Ross or anyone else is Josh Drive Hayes, like I said earlier. And I will leave a link in the description of the video, which goes into his take on the whole thing. But I still just, I can't hammer this point home enough. It's not that Pirate Software has to get on board with the initiative. It would have been nice if he did so at the beginning and could have helped push the initiative in a way that he could ensure wouldn't screw over developers' creativity and financial opportunities. But that's an opportunity that's long since passed, so maybe I should stop talking about that. But what I can't get over is just the sheer arrogance and stubbornness to not look at what he factually did. He said wrong. He said false things about the campaign. He said it was about single player games with online only DRM. That's not what it is about. It's about all games. Do I think there are more pressing matters in this video game industry that probably should be more talked about and more addressed than Stop Killing Games? Definitely, yeah. We should have dealt with crunch culture and executives being horrific, slimy pieces of shit to their employees in the game industry a long time ago. That should have been something we should have sorted a good while ago in whatever way we could have. But right now, it's about protecting consumer rights in this industry without limiting the scope and creative opportunities for game developers and publishers. And I have no doubt that the campaign will work alongside publishers and developers to ensure that when this starts getting ratified into EU law, because this likely will, that's the hope anyway, because the EU petition is in 35% overdrive. It just needs 1.4 million. It's at 1.15, I think, at the moment, just to make sure that any false signatures or signatures with like misspellings that will basically be invalidated when proper counting starts, so that, you know, it'll still be over 1 million signatures. The UK petition, by the time this video goes up, will probably have eclipsed 160,000. So it's not like we aren't going to have further discussions in this specific topic, but how we have conversations about it going forward should be as a result of the horrific shit that has already happened to Thor and Ross on both sides, where people have been horrible and done things that they believe were in the greater good, but were just genuinely like unhinged, shitty fucking behavior. But please, I also would like it that on all sides, when discussing this topic, we all of us take our egos out of the equation. because I want the best for developers and publishers, because with that, they make better games that I'm more likely to have amazing experiences and memories with. But at the same time, I would like that without the threat of me not being able to play said games that I purchase. I would like it so that games aren't killed. So with that being said, stop killing games. If you somehow haven't signed either the EU initiative or the UK one, whichever one is more applicable to you, because thank you Brexit, you piece of shit. The links will be in the description, and I highly encourage you to sign it, even though they've already passed their initial goals, because more signatures will still mean more discussion and overall a more positive, hopeful result in the future regarding this topic. I would still like to talk to people about Stop Killing Games, but although to be fair, I did mostly make this video because I kept finding myself in situations while I was writing paragraphs on Discord to different people explaining what the whole thing was about. But still, if there's anything you want to ask me about, whether it's Stop Killing Games or anything else, I guess, you can email me at TubeSqueeze@pm.me. Or you can always just leave it in a comment in the description, or at me on Twitter or Blue Sky, or join the Discord and ask me there. My name is Dom, this has been TubeSqueeze, and overall, this entire situation has been fucking tiring and draining, but I'm still hopeful something positive will come out of it in the end. Take care, peeps. Have a good weekend.